2017 was a big year for the Daily Signal. We set a new record thanks to you. Daily Signal videos were watched over 125 million times in 2017. Thank you for being a part of that. So part of our year end, we wanted to share some of those videos with you. Take a look now at some of our favorites from our commentary series. Pictures of destroyed homes and flooded neighborhoods are heartbreaking, but the inspiring images of neighbors helping neighbors and average citizens performing heroic acts has shown Texas and America at its best. The eyes of the country have been on Texas as it deals with the devastating effects of Hurricane Harvey. Along with coverage of the storm, it's the efforts of citizen volunteers that are becoming a major focus of the story. As William Long, head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, stressed in interviews before the storm even hit, when it comes to most disasters, government alone can't save the day. Citizens need to be ready to save neighbors in harm's way. And, quote, people need to be the help before the help arrives. And that is exactly what we've seen in Texas. There is no telling how many lives have been saved because countless individuals took it upon themselves to wade through streets searching for family, friends, and strangers trapped by rising floodwaters, using their personal boats, kayaks, and jet skis to reach people rescue workers could not, and opening up their homes to those who had nowhere to go. Remarkably, much of the major news media almost seemed shocked by all the Good Samaritan stories coming out of Houston and other communities in southeast Texas rocked by the storm. Perhaps that's because they've grown so accustomed to giving wall-to-wall coverage to fringe causes and groups that are more interested in dividing America than making it better. Frankly, it's increasingly hard to follow the news without starting to feel as though a protest or march or made-for-TV riot is around every corner. But as Texans have shown us, civil society, the little platoons that philosopher Edmund Burke referred to, while missing from most headlines and cable news, is still there. As a native of the Lone Star State, I'm not surprised by the good we've seen. Texas got its very name from the Native American word Tejas, which means friendship and ally. And it's that sentiment that has been on full display in the aftermath of Harvey. My guess is many of you aren't surprised either, because as heroic and inspiring as many acts we've seen on our television screens and social media feeds have been, this is what you would do if faced with the same circumstance. It's what most of the folks across the street from you would do. And it's what most of the people in the next town or city of your state would do. What we've witnessed in Texas is the best of America. People from different cultural and economic and racial backgrounds coming together to demonstrate that all lives matter and showing through actions, not protest, what it looks like to love thy neighbor. One of the dire consequences of the cultural norming of transgenderism is the treatment of children who express confusion about their biological sex. At younger and younger ages, they are being encouraged to take part in what are called transition-affirming treatments that may be emotionally and physically damaging, and in some cases, irreversible. The evidence suggests that advocates of such treatments are more committed to a politically correct agenda than to science, or what is ultimately good for children. Because when it comes to children, here are 3 key facts those promoting the transgender agenda ignore. Number 1, despite what you often hear, scientific evidence shows people are not born trapped in the body of the wrong sex. If transgenderism were biological, then studies of identical twins should prove that. But instead, they show just the opposite. In a 2013 study of transgender twins, the largest of its kind, only 28% of the time did both identical twins, who contain 100% of the same DNA and are exposed to the same prenatal hormones, identify as transgender. That means that over 70% of the time, what contributed to one of the twins deciding they were the opposite sex of what they were born had nothing to do with biology. Number 2, after passing through puberty, the majority of young children who originally expressed distress and confusion about their biological sex outgrew it, we're talking 75 to 95% of such children. But with the widespread push to embrace and affirm transgenderism, perhaps it shouldn't be surprising that more children are questioning their gender. In the United Kingdom, for example, a government-affiliated health service dealing in gender identity issues for those under the age of 18 experienced a 2,000% increase in patient referrals since 2009. For children under the age of 6, the referrals have increased by over 400%. Number 3, medical treatments often used to treat children with gender dysphoria have not been proven safe. Serious questions remain, including whether such treatments may cause obesity and testicular cancer in males, and decreased bone and muscle growth and infertility in both sexes. No rigorous scientific studies exist to show the long-term physical or psychological effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormone treatments on normally developing children. None. The rush by the media, cultural elites, and politically correct medical organizations to normalize and embrace transgenderism has no time for fact-finding. So much for science, and so much for having the best interest of children at heart. Parents, beware.
The mass shooting that took place at a Jason Aldean country concert in Las Vegas on Sunday night was a demonstration of what evil men can do to fellow human beings. There were immediate calls to politicize the event, but Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin had a great response that many Americans implicitly understand. He said on Twitter, "To all those political opportunists who are seizing on the tragedy in Las Vegas to call for more gun regs, you can't regulate evil. In a fallen world, evil will be committed no matter what we do. The challenge is for good people to respond and use what power they have to counteract it." This was certainly the case as numerous stories surfaced from Las Vegas of people helping each other and heroically risking their lives for others. Their stories deserve to be told. For instance, Jonathan Smith, a 30-year-old copy machine repairman, rushed into action when he heard shots being fired and understood what was happening. Smith kept shouting, active shooter, let's go, we have to run," while directing about 30 people to safety. While helping others, Smith took a bullet in the neck, which may stay in his body for the rest of his life. Sonny Melton, a nurse from Tennessee, saved his wife Heather from gunfire. She said he was killed helping her. "He saved my life. He grabbed me and started running when I felt him get shot in the back," she said in an interview with WSMV. "I want everyone to know what a kind-hearted, loving man he was. But at this point, I can barely breathe." During the gunfire, former Marine Taylor Winston found an unattended truck with keys in the ignition. He used it to transport numerous injured victims to the hospital. Another soldier, Army veteran Rob Ledbetter, used a shirt to apply a tourniquet to a wounded girl and helped other wounded people. He said that his experience on battlefields helped him respond to and cope with what had happened. Lindsay Paget and her fiancé Mike J. used their truck to get numerous people to medical care. "We were just trying to get people to the hospital. We got halfway there, and as we were getting on the freeway, we saw an ambulance stopped. So we went over and they started taking the most critical people and putting them in the ambulance," Paget said, according to ABC News. It wasn't just people at the scene of the crime who responded to help. One GoFundMe page raised over $2 million to help victims of the attack. And countless people showed up to wait for hours in line at blood banks in Las Vegas. One of the individuals waiting in line, Hector Salas, said, according to CNN, "This is America, people coming together, helping out." Some of these stories and others were recounted by White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders at a briefing on Monday.
What these people did for each other says far more about who we are as Americans than the cowardly acts of a killer ever could. The Gospel of John reminds us that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for a friend.
Just this year, we have seen Americans respond heroically to natural disaster and tragedy, such as in Texas, where we saw thousands of Americans rush to help their neighbors as a destructive hurricane barreled through. Sometimes, in the face of horror, there are no policies or prescriptions that apply besides the voluntary courage and sacrifice of those who are good. This, among many other things, is what makes America great.
Congratulations, it's a boy. Or, congratulations, it's a girl. As a pediatrician for nearly 20 years, that's how many of my patient relationships began. Our bodies declare our sex. Biological sex is not assigned. Sex is determined at conception by our DNA stamped into every cell of our bodies. Human sexuality is binary. Either you have a normal Y chromosome and develop into a male, or you don't, and you will develop into a female. There are at least 6,500 genetic differences between men and women. Hormones and surgery cannot and do not change this. Look, an identity is not biological, it is psychological. Identity has to do with thinking and feeling. Thoughts and feelings are not biologically hardwired. Our thinking and feeling may be factually right or factually wrong. For example, if I walk into my doctor's office today and say, "Hi, I'm Margaret Thatcher," my physician will say I am delusional and give me an antipsychotic. However, if instead I walked in and said, "I am a man," he would say, "Congratulations, you're transgender." If I were to say, "Doctor, I am suicidal. I'm an amputee trapped in a normal body. Please surgically remove my leg," I'll be diagnosed with body identity integrity disorder. But if I walk up to that same doctor and say, "I'm a man, sign me up for a double mastectomy," my physician will. See, according to most mainstream medical organizations, if you want to cut off a healthy arm or a healthy leg, you're mentally ill. But if you want to cut off healthy breasts or a penis, you're transgender. Let's be clear, no one is born transgender. If gender identity were hardwired in the brain before birth, identical twins would have the same gender identity 100% of the time. They don't. I had one little boy, a patient we'll call Andy. Between the ages of 3 and 5, he increasingly played with girls and stereotypical girl toys and started saying he was a girl. I referred the parents and Andy to a therapist. Sometimes mental illness of a parent or abuse of the child are factors. But more commonly, the child has misperceived family dynamics and internalized a false belief. In the middle of one session, Andy put down the toy truck and held on to the Barbie and said, "Mommy and Daddy, you don't love me when I'm a boy." What the therapist learned is that when Andy was 3, his sister with special needs was born. She required significantly more of his parents' care and attention. Andy misperceived this as, "Mommy and Daddy love girls. If I want them to love me again, I have to be a girl." With family therapy, Andy got better. Today, Andy's parents would be told something quite different. They would hear, "This is who Andy really is. You must change his name, ensure that everyone treats him as a girl, or else he will commit suicide." As Andy would approach puberty, the experts would put him on puberty blockers so that he could continue to impersonate a girl. Experts assure us it doesn't matter that we've never tested puberty blockers in biologically normal children. It doesn't matter that when blockers are used to treat prostate cancer in men and gynecologic problems in women, that they cause problems with memory. We don't need testing. No, we need to arrest his physical development now, or he'll commit suicide. But this is not true. Instead, when supported in their biological sex through natural puberty, the vast majority of gender-confused children get better. Yet, we are chemically castrating gender-confused children with puberty blockers. Then, we permanently sterilize many of them by adding cross-sex hormones. Cross-sex hormones are estrogen and testosterone. Those put young children at risk for heart disease, strokes, diabetes, cancers, and even the very emotional problems that experts claim to be preventing. P.S. If a girl who insists she is a man has been on testosterone daily for 1 year, she's cleared to get a bilateral mastectomy at age 16. Now mind you, the American Academy of Pediatrics recently came out with a report that urges pediatricians to caution teenagers about getting tattoos because tattoos are essentially permanent and can cause scarring. But this same AAP is 110% in support of 16-year-old girls getting a double mastectomy, even without parental consent, so long as the girl insists that she is a man and has been taking testosterone daily for 1 year. Let's be clear, to indoctrinate all children from preschool forward with the lie that they could be trapped in the wrong body disrupts the very foundation of a child's reality testing. If a child can't trust the reality of their physical bodies, who or what can they trust? Transgender ideology in schools is psychological abuse that often leads to chemical castration, sterilization, and surgical mutilation. If that's not child abuse, ladies and gentlemen, what is?
You might have seen a left-leaning video circulating the internet recently that's gotten millions of views and purports to talk about the facts on education spending. But what really are the facts when it comes to federal spending on K-12 education?
This is a budget, and I characterized it, Mr. Chairman, in the Ag Appropriations Committee this morning. It is cruel, it is inhumane, and it is heartless.
Unfortunately, this is a pretty typical talking point that any effort to cut spending will somehow, at the federal level, hurt educational progress in the long run. But if we're really serious about the facts are that we have seen federal per-pupil expenditures since the 1970s nearly triple. And yet, student achievement, particularly for disadvantaged children, has remained flat.
There's less money going to high poverty areas.
Again, back to the facts. If we actually look at what the Trump administration's budget does for the Department of Education, while it makes some long overdue cuts of about $9 billion, it actually increases spending by $1 billion for Title I programs, which go specifically to students who live in low-income areas. So this just runs counter to what we actually see in the budget numbers.
But millions of kids around this country are going to suffer what has been done with a $9.2 billion cut to our education programs, which is supposed to serve our youngsters, make sure they have a good future and a bright future. And I'm going to fight this budget, Mr. Chairman, with every fiber of my body.
Where was this outrage when President Obama tried to eliminate the federal DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, which provides scholarships to low-income, poor children living in the nation's capital? It would have been great to see that much passion when school choice programs that actually help low-income children achieve their life and career goals are threatened. Moreover, we know that the federal government is the last place we should look for educational improvements. If we really want to help children, it all starts by restoring state and local control of education and empowering those people who know them best, and that's their parents. So is this budget really heartless?
It is cruel, it is inhumane, and it is heartless.
It's not. If we look at the numbers, these reductions are a necessary condition for actually restoring state and local control of education. And that's really important if we want to situate programs as close to the children that they affect as possible, which is smart policy and ensures that parents, not bureaucrats in Washington, are making decisions about what's best for their children.